Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 391. I'm your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Daniel for Boxing News and the Inscriber. Uh, schedule conflicts was on my end and Gil's end has forced me to do a show on a Thursday this week. Also, was the reason why we was off the past couple of weeks, and unfortunately, Gail, for the time being, cannot do shows on Thursday. We hope to have her back on as soon as possible. What's going on, Daniel?
What's going on, fellas? Yep, here in the Thursday.
Yeah. For those, so like I said, hope to have Gail back on as soon as possible, whenever my schedule starts to settle down. For those who are new to Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live, um, YouTube show, podcast, blog, site, etc. Um, Talking all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, it will get discussed. If you want to find out any and all things, pound for pound boxing report. The site is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.com. If you wish to email us with any questions, thoughts, suggestions, etc., or anything that's on your mind, boxing wise, you can do so. P4pboxing at p4pboxingreport.com. If you navigate the site, you'll find links to where to find Pound for Pound Boxing Report all over the social media uh, realm. Links to the YouTube channel, links to the Facebook page, link to Twitter, um, IG page as well. If you're checking us out live, or if you're just checking us out on YouTube, period, please make sure to hit that like button. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Help the overall algorithms and get us closer to being monetized. Also on the site, if you wish to donate, with tax season coming on, people getting their taxes done. If you have some spare change over, uh, please shoot some coins to Pound for Pound Box Report. Got a Cash Me and PayPal donation link. Let donation be the best nation. Doesn't matter to us. It's $1, $2, $5. We will be grateful if you would donate some coin to help the overall production behind the scenes. Um, Also, excuse me, right quick, some dealing with some technical issues. Um, if you wish to donate, yeah, catch me a PayPal donation link. And last but certainly not least, um, since we still at the beginning of the year, people are still doing their New Year's resolution things and whatnot. If you're looking to get your body right, please check out Pound for Pound Box Report Beachbody on Demand link. Please check out Beachbody on Demand. Uh, Multitude of programs for any and all suitable interests. If you're looking for functional workouts, Beachbody on Demand has it. If you're looking for cardio workouts, Beachbody on Demand has it. If you're looking for resistance focused workouts, Beachbody on Demand has it. If you're looking for a boxing specific program, Beachbody on Demand has it in the form of 10 rounds, a 6-week program, uh, 3 days a week of boxing based cardio, 2 days a week of resistance work. I've gone through it a couple of times. I enjoyed it. I think you will as well. At the very least, take advantage of the 14-day trial, free trial on Beachbody on Demand. And that is for 14 days. You get free access to any and all fitness programs on BOD, on Beachbody on Demand. Let's get things going this evening, uh, Daniel. And let's head over to recap fights from the UK that took place this past weekend. Let's start with the flyweight bout. The headliner of this event, it was broadcast live on ESPN Plus here in the States, was Artur Beterbiev and Anthony Yarde. But let's start with the return of Artem, the Dalakian, excuse me, defending his WBA flyweight title against David Jimenez, right? And Dalakian has been out the ring since 2020. And to me, the ring rust showed he wasn't at his best. He was far from his best. Uh, he was tentative. He was hesitant, while Jimenez was aggressive. The chat was on the back foot the majority of the fight. In my opinion, Jimenez should have left the ring with the belt wrapped around his waist. Many boxing fans agreed who watched it live and who has talked about it in the days afterwards. Uh, Robbery has been used a lot. I don't like that word, but in this case, it applies. Uh, Bottom line for me, Daniel, yeah, the champion Artur Dalakian did not deserve that fight. That was Jimenez. He was in control of the action all the way. He was the more aggressive fighter. He was the more active fighter. He was the busier fighter. He was the stronger fighter throughout. He controlled things from jump.
Yeah, this is unfortunately one of the fights that does leave a bad taste in the mouth because Jimenez, like I said, he came in, he was aggressive but not reckless. He defended well and had overall the better fight plan than Arcanian. Now, you did mention the ring rust. That part of it falls into it as well, but at the same time, it shouldn't be like dismissed the way the judges dismissed it. Jimenez should be the champion right now. It is unfortunately disheartening because we see situations like this happening over and over and over again where the fighter that had the better game plan, the better defense, the better stamina, the better offensive game plan, all of which Jimenez had, doesn't get recognized, and instead what may be considered a house, like an in-house fighter, gets the decision on it, and like I said, it just leaves a bad taste in the mouth. It was bad enough where I almost turned off the plus when I watched it. Because just like if this is gonna be how it starts, I do not want to see anymore. But luckily I calmed myself down after watching it.
Sorry, I was on mute. To me, this was so egregious that the WBA should take some kind of investigation and order a rematch at the very least. Um, Lengthy layoff from the champion aside. I can't stress enough. Um, there have been videos of this. As of earlier today, there was video of this on YouTube, so it may be taken down by now. But this fight should be available if you for those who didn't catch it and want to watch the replay of it. It should be on YouTube as we speak right now. But yeah, no way, no way the champ deserved this, and he should have an L on his record, no question in my mind. Let's move on to the main event here, and the big fight of the weekend, of course, and that is the unified light heavyweight champion, Artur Beterbiev, fighting WBO mandatory Anthony Yarde over in London. Um, I have to give Yarde credit here, Daniel. Uh, I saw improvement from this bout as opposed to his first title shot against Kovalev. I think that was in 2019 over in Russia, right? Uh, Yarde ended up losing, getting stopped in 8 rounds, but he had his share of success, landed his pound of flesh, if you will, throughout. Beterbiev, he cut Beterbiev. I thought on at least one occasion he got the champion's attention, but here's the thing. Uh, Despite the improvement of the fighter, and I must say the improvement of Tunde Ajay working the corner, there was some things still missing from his game. Um, the lack of a good hard jab, right? The fact that he stayed on the ropes too long, uh, playing into Berterbiev's hand at too many times in terms of standing there and fighting when he didn't have to. I think Andre Ward noted during the fight, instead of staying on the ropes, he could have just slid his way to get back in the center of the ring where he at times had the better of it. Berterbiev's power eventually came into play, right? And his strength came into play. And that was the difference in this fight as he eventually hurt and stopped Yarde. Give Yarde credit for his performance, but the overwhelming thing that I got from this fight, Daniel, is there's talk now of him fighting Duvall in the post fight press conference. Uh, Associates of top rank uh, throughout the possibility of a fight with Bivol between Beterbiev and Bivol this summer. My thing is here, whether it's summer, whether the fight take place in 2024, in the aftermath of this fight between Beterbiev and Yarde. If Beterbiev were to fight Bivol, I would make Bivol the clear favorite.
This is an interesting fight to watch because Yard actually had a bit of discipline in this fight. He did show improvement on that. Most probably figured you would try to come out guns blazing against somebody like Beterbiev. But no, he maintained his cool. He tried to outbox him for the first couple of rounds and was doing a fairly good job the first 2 rounds. Unfortunately, Beterbiev is also a very technically sound fighter, and he's an accumulation puncher. He's not a guy that's going to knock you out with one punch out of the blue. He's going at this stage of his career, he's going to beat you in attrition. That's what he did. Because slowly, Yarde started moving away from the part of the game plan, like sticking with the jab, trying to outbox him, not trying to find a haymaker. He started to move away from that part, and it started to affect his defense, and which allowed Beterbiev to land good shots. And yeah, I think it probably was in the 5th or the 6th round where Yarde did catch Beterbiev really good, and you notice that the punch you notice Beterbiev's eyes like, oh, okay, this kid has a power. But ultimately, he broke Yarde down enough, knocked him down in the 8th. Yarde got up, but I think either it was a combination of the referee and the corner, if my understanding is right, just throwing the towel at the same time. They just happened to happen at the same time, and which obviously led to Beterbiev victory. And right now, the only fight left for Beterbiev is Bivol. The main thing's going to be is how soon can you do it? Because they're going to want to have it in probably in the international market, not probably in the U.S. market. And Beterbiev, you got to catch him now. As he's getting older, because that's what people are waiting for. People are waiting for Beterbiev to get old overnight. He hasn't gotten there yet, but there really is no other opponent that can do it other than Bivol.
You say there's no other fight for Beterbiev. I get it, but there still is a question of who he will fight next, right? Kind of Eddie Hearn talking out of both sides of his mouth. And the reason I mentioned him is because he's the promoter of Callum Smith, former super middleweight champion, who's now a mandatory contender at 175, I believe, by the WBC. Correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel. In the moments after the fight, Hearn tweeted that Beterbiev and Smith is next, and the winner gets Bivol. But in the days after that, he has talked about the possibility of Bivol fighting Beterbiev at some point this year. The question becomes, Bivol, a fight for undisputed between the two champions, Bivol and Beterbiev. That's the fight that a lot of boxing fans want to see this year, right? One of the best matchups in the sport. When will we see it? Will we see it in the summer as Top Rank is proposing? Will Smith and Hearn enforce their mandatory status and say we're next? Will they take a step aside fee? What direction do you see all of this? How do you see all of this ending up?
It really depends on. We know who the exact person is going to depend on Canelo. If it's a situation where he takes his fight in May, we're fighting John Ryder, and if he finishes John Ryder the way everybody still expects him to finish John Ryder, the date for Bivol is right there in September. So if you're in Bivol's camp, do you risk a fight with Beterbiev in the summer and then go right back for a fight against Canelo Mexican Independence Day weekend? You can't, unfortunately. In this situation, you can't. So that's probably the main variable that's fallen into it. So that's probably what's going to hold up a little bit of the fight, because unless they can do it really, really fast, unless they can do it at the same time that Canelo's having to fight.
Yeah, because I'm hearing the possibility that they're shooting for. They said the summer, but I've also heard, the tea leaves say that this fight could happen. The fight between the two could happen early as early as late May.
That's probably the only time it'll make sense for Bivol to do that fight and still have enough time to get ready for Canelo in the rematch. That's of course if he wins. Because that's what makes this interesting between Beterbiev and Bivol, because Beterbiev, you've seen him now. He's a now accumulation puncher. He's going to beat you now into attrition, and he's not a slouch technically. He does things well. And Bivol, even though he showed he showed patience and improvement in beating Canelo the way he did, and beating Zerda the way he did, there's still that tendency out there that I feel like if he feels like he's just outboxing a person by the third round, he's not going to try to go for the gusto. And you cannot afford that against a puncher like Beterbiev. And then not to mention there's also some possible geopolitical things happening between certain areas where Bibble's from and where Beterbiev's from. So that we got to keep an eye on that. But if they can do this fight in May, it'll work enough for Bibble where if he wins, he's undisputed. Then you have the fights. Then you have undisputed 168, undisputed light heavyweight, and now you have the rematch. And we'll see how motivated Canelo will be at that stage for that rematch.
If they were to fight right now, who would you pick?
Right now, I would probably say Bivol on points. Because he's shown enough improvement on defense and patience. He's not reckless. That he may be able to stave off the accumulation of punches from Beterbiev enough where he's able to beat him with the jab, with ring generalship, with ring position.
I just dare I say that Beterbiev showed some age in this fight against Yarde. Yarde is not that. Yarde doesn't have the speed, hand and foot of Bivol, and yet he was able to land flush on Beterbiev. He's Beterbiev, the WBA champion, is not the puncher that Yarde is, but he's a much better boxer. He's a cleaner boxer. He's more accurate, right? And he fights with more. He's able to use his skill and boxing brain to get fighters in position in a way that Yarde is not, right? And if Yarde was able to land in the degree that he was against Beterbiev, imagine what Bivol would do, right? Because Bivol is just a cleaner fighter, and Bivol is fighting with the confidence coming off of what was a fantastic 2022. As some know, I'm a senior writer for ThreeKingsBoxing.com. Please go to ThreeKingsBoxing.com, your source for pure, unadulterated boxing information. Shout out to the entire Three Kings staff. head of 3KB, 2K, fellow senior writer and head of media relations, Bo, Red. We named Bivol as our 2022 Fighter of the Year. And last year for Bivol was outstanding, right? Coming off of the win against Canelo in a high-profile fight where, forget what the scorecard said, Bivol dominated Canelo that night. Coming off of the win against Zerto Ramirez, who's a legit guy, right? He is in his prime. And I just think I agree with you. Ultimately, I just think he will be too much from a boxing perspective. Will do enough will be responsible defensively and just aggressive enough to get home with shots, and he will ultimately win by decision. Let's move on from the UK and ESPN Plus that card to the Zone. They also had a card this weekend, headlined by Alexis Rocha, world ranked welterweight, fighting George Ashie. Rocha has his problems early on. I believe he was cut in the third or fourth round. But again, just like Beterbiev finally got home with power, so did Rocha. He was able to find the punches and so ultimately stop Ashie in round 7. Comment on the fight if you want to, but there was some interesting developments during this card, during the broadcast, and most definitely after the fight. Afterwards, the name Terence Crawford was mentioned a lot during the broadcast, right? We now come to find out, and we're going to kind of use this result to make a bit of a segue in the news here. We now know that Bud had a meeting with both De La Hoya and Hopkins. De La Hoya strongly suggested that they could be working with Bud, that Rocha's next fight could be against Hopkins, be against Crawford. Excuse me. Hopkins basically said that there's something on the table in terms of that possible fight. Talk about the fight itself, or the result, I should say, Daniel. And again, segueing into the news here a bit. Talk about Bud meeting with Golden Boy. Are we on the verge of some kind of deal between Terence Crawford and Golden Boy?
Well, first, let's talk about the fight, because while I didn't catch the whole fight, I was able to catch some highlights. And Rocha got a nasty cut in this fight. But one of the things that makes Alexis Rocha real appealing as a fighter, he's one of those guys that is going to fight through adversity. If you put something in front of him, it looks like a bad deal, he's going to try to come forward. He's going to make the best of it, and that's what he did. And a cut that, if it got a little worse, probably would have stopped the fight. He was able to get through it. His team was able to take care of the cut enough where he was able to finish the job when he did in the seventh, I think it was 7th or 8th round. And the wheel started turning once the name Bud was mentioned a lot in the post-fight interviews. Because normally those are the questions that are left for Virgil after his fights. Because we know he's high up in the WBO rankings, but there may be some fluctuations in that. Now, talking to the news, it's an interesting situation watching here when it comes to Terence Crawford. Leaving Top Rank the way he did, with bitterness and then with a court case, leaving it in a lawsuit, and then trying this deal with BLK Prime where he got paid half of his purse before the fight and supposedly half afterwards. And then you have this meeting. It probably provides it into an interesting situation, and it does break the narrative of, quote unquote, the Floyd template of leaving the big promoter, doing everything yourself, and you ultimately wind up benefiting a lot more financially for it. We have to remember, and that because I know that's one of the big myths about Floyd. We have to remember that what's the promoter he worked with a lot.
The difference is that Floyd stayed connected with Heyman, so he was never quote unquote on his own.
Yeah, that's the other part of the myth that gets derailed. But the main thing about it in this case is what's the promoter that he worked with almost exclusively throughout the whole time until the Pacquiao fight. Golden Boy. And shows you that for all, yes, we clown Oscar a lot. let's not get it twisted. We clown Oscar a lot, but most of the people around him, including B-Hop, know in many ways what they're doing. And that's probably what Bud's looking into it. He's tried to do it himself, but now he understands that I'm not going to get a lot of marquee fights if I feel like I'm going to be frozen out the way it feels like I'm being frozen out against Spence. And I can't attract the opponents that are going to be able to bring in their own fans alongside his fans to make a good gate, which we can all agree David Amnesian was not that fighter to bring his own fans in with it. Rocha, because of what he's doing, kind of has a little bit of a good fan base that he can bring. It's not as big as Bud's by no means, but they can do something right quick. And in many ways, it's also an admission that sometimes going out on your own, depending on the situation, doesn't work all the time. Canelo was able to do what he does on his own because at that point he was already the number one guy in the sport. So he had the clout to do what he did. Bud, even though I know you yourself, you consider him the top three, if not top pound for pound fighter, he doesn't have that clout at this stage of his career. So he does need somebody to guide him. And if you're not going to go back to Bob, and it's completely understandable not going back to Bob, then you go with somebody that, for unless I knows what they're doing, and they've been known to what they're doing in the division that you're in, which is welterweight. So if you can have a fight with Rocha, you beat Rocha, and if Virgil isn't tied up, then you have the fight with Virgil. Those are the type of fights that fans want. We, as much as we want to talk about, we want to have it against Bud versus Spence, it keeps looking less by the day that we're going to see that fight when we want to. So why not have a good test on 147 and finish it against young fighters that are coming up? They're going to be the future of the division. It's an interesting move. It is probably an admission that you need to do things well. And sorry, for Golden Boy, after the departure that they've had throughout the years, this could be a good bounce back for them. Puts them a little bit back on their feet. And as they're slowly rebuilding their roster with prospects, it's a good thing to have somebody like Bud be your headliner.
It's not everything is rosier on the other side. Daniel, to your point, sometimes there's still a need for fighters, for most fighters, for 98% of fighters, to have a power broker at their side when it comes to their careers, right? Just like in the NFL, it's often, and you see with the Lamar Jackson situation and the attempt to get a new deal, sometimes it's a good thing to have an agent, right? to do some of the dirty mess behind the scenes when it comes to back and forth negotiations with an owner and GM. Often it's time to have as good as dirty as promoters can be. Sometimes, and managers, by the way, it's good to have someone. It's good. You still need them around, right? When it comes to your career, that's what this is showing to me, and it also says to me that he needs someone to make a fight with Spence. He cannot do it on his own. During the broadcast, De La Hoya said that their proposal to Crawford was that they can present a path that would lead to an ultimate fight with Spence, right? Um, because because to me that says that Bud wet the bed when it came to the negotiations for a fight with Spence, burned bridges with PBC, especially when he disclosed how he tried to go another route uh, in terms of getting additional money outside of PBC and whatnot. And PBC is like, okay, uh, you did this over here without our knowledge. Uh, as a result, you're going to be kept at bay. Don't think you can make a fight with Spence now. And Golden Boy is like, okay, let us talk to PBC. Let us work with you. We work with them. We have a plan. We can have a plan in place to land a fight with Spence, and Roach and fighting Rocha in a voluntary defense is part of that plan. To me, that's all. That's what this ultimately says. Sign some kind of deal with Bud. Bud make a title defense against Rocha spring summer, and Golden Boy can do negotiations with PBC, which they've done before, right? Have done and doing currently right now when it comes to the fight with Garcia and Davis. They see in
Mhm.
this, okay, we can make a fight with Davis. You see us, we're making this fight with Davis now. We're working with PBC. We can do the same thing for you in terms of an ultimate match with Errol Spence. That's all this says to me.
Yeah, and it. Who would have thought? Seriously, who would have thought? Even a year ago, knowing the history behind everything, that you would see Oscar and Al break bread. You're probably watching it right now in one of the marquee fights in the lightweight division, and that can feel a lot more for Bud, especially since Bud knows that he Oscar even before this has dealt with Al before on a business level. B Hop has dealt with Al before on a business level, and even though B Hop, we'll admit, B Hop was talking a little greasy about PBC a few days ago. Even with that, they still know how to do business because
He's talking greasy now, but he also sees the possibility. He also sees money on the table and what and what landing Bud could do with for Golden Boy, and in terms him, what a potential fight between Spence and Crawford with Golden Boy being co-promoters can do for the company and for him. So yeah, he's talking trash now, but
yeah, they,
that's just talk now.
yeah, and just look at the TV partners. You're gonna have the Zone, and you're gonna have Showtime. There's been a lot of talk about making these cross platform, cross network pay per views be a little bit more common now, and that would fit the menu. You could kind of see one on the Zone pay per view or on Showtime pay per view, and either way it'll work because the money's there to make that fight. Each day the money's getting less, but you better strike when the iron is hot, and I think Bud is noticing that.
Stick to Golden Boy here as we get fully into the news segment, right? If you have anything that you want to talk about, Daniel, please do so during this particular live episode. Um, we mentioned how Golden Boy met with Bud Crawford this week. They also met with Edgar Berlanga, who recently departed, parted ways, excuse me, from Top Rank. He's a free agent now. Um, Meeting with Crawford, meeting with Berlanga within the same week time span. Uh, you mentioned how De La Hoya has been. There's a lot of shade been thrown towards De La Hoya's way over the past few years, right? Uh, is 2023 about to be the rise of Golden Boy Promotions?
It could be, because maybe they're starting to really get back to basics. Like I said, they have a good pool of prospects. They're very young. They're very green still, but they have a good pool of prospects. And the staple for Golden Boy has always been, we're going to pair them tough. We're going to see who's going to come out on who. And the situation with Berlanga is an interesting one, because we both have said in the last, 2 or 3 fights that Berlanga has had, it's felt like he's regressed as a fighter in many ways. Part of that could be himself, and part of it's also the matchmaking, because Top Rank may have positioned him just try to be the main Puerto Rican attraction, to come in and pair him safe. And if you pair fighters safe too long, you ultimately stunt their growth. And that may have been the situation that happened with Berlanga. Top Rank realized what they did, and they also realized they do have another young Puerto Rican in Xander Zayas that they can actually position better, but not make the same mistake. But here's the interesting part when it comes to Berlanga. He's a super middleweight. If Golden Boy can rebuild Berlanga within a year, and if one Canelo Alvarez stays around at 168, that forces Canelo to the table as a mandatory. Because at this stage of his career, if he's all about legacy for Canelo, if it's all about making history, really doubt that he would drop a belt if it meant not dealing with Oscar. And just like we mentioned, Oscar and Al doing business together, breaking bread. At some point, I think you're going to see Canelo and Oscar break bread again. It may not be like a permanent deal, but you're going to see them probably break again, because eventually it's going to come to the point where they're going to have to do business together. And that may be the angle that Oscar's playing with Berlanga.
Jaime Munguia is looking for a fight, right? Any chance we could see him in Berlanga later on this year, assuming that there's some serious moves here? There's some meat on the bone in terms of the meeting with Berlanga and Golden Boy, and he signs a deal with Oscar.
For me, in my opinion, they have to buy out Zanfer out of the contract to do it. A lot of, to me, of what the matchmaking has been happening to me with Munguia is mainly Zanfer, because it's unfortunately one of the bad traits about Zanfer. Zanfer does a really good well building up fighters within Mexico, but then they have a tendency, when they catch a good one, to overprotect them for a bit. And that's, to me, that's what's happening with Munguia. So if Golden Boy can buy Zanfer out of the contract, maybe you can see that, because you get it to the point where Munguia's still a young kid. He's still growing. He's not going to make middleweight soon. He's not going to make middleweight much longer. So you go down to 168, and if it's him or Berlanga, you have naturally right there, Mexico versus Puerto Rico. Instant selling point.
Joe Joyce, mandatory contender, right? He's waiting for the situation to get resolved between Usyk and Fury. We saw him getting into it with Fury following Fury's win over Chisora late last year, right? He was right in the middle of it between Fury and Usyk. Made headlines all over after that fight. Signed to fight Zhilei Zhang. Zhilei Zhang lost the fight to Philip Hergovich last year in an IBF heavyweight eliminator. I personally felt that he had a good case, the fight going his way, right? Interesting fight. Very good fight, Daniel. They're going to fight on April 15th. Are you surprised, given his number one, his mandatory contender status, that Joyce is fighting someone of this level as basically a keep busy fight?
No, not really, because Joyce has shown himself to be a guy that's not going to try to play it safe when it comes to matchmaking. And the Zhilei Zhang is that's a very good opponent to pick, especially after his showing against Herkovich. That to me is probably going to be the best test of what you can do to this day against somebody that has the size similar to that of a Fury. And if that's the person you're shooting for, then what a good way to prepare for it, because Zhang showed that he has the stamina, he can take a punch, and we know Joyce is country strong. If he lands a punch, he's going to rock you.
Country strong and with a chin of granite.
Yep. So this is going to be a good test, and good on him too. Like I said, you could have done everything possible. You really could have gone the Anthony Joshua route, what he's doing right now, picking a safe fight to keep yourself busy, because you know you're gonna be there. The ranking's still gonna be there. But Joyce, no, he's challenging himself. He knows that age-wise time is not on his side. So challenge yourself as much as you can, and you make it to the point where you force Fury or Usyk to not just look at each other. They have to now look at Joyce. But good move.
I got one last bit of news here, and that is kind of the sad situation involving one Kell Brook, former IBF welterweight champion, right? Last time we saw him in the ring, gained arguably the sweetest win of his career, stopping arch rival Kell Brook early last year, February last year, at the 6-round stoppage, I believe it was. In May of 2022, he announced his retirement. If you go to 3kingsboxing.com, we detailed comments from Brook from a few months back that he's struggling when it comes to struggling when it comes to dealing with retirement. Well, according to the British Sun, they obtained a video of Brook at assuming his residence, snorting a substance which looked to be cocaine, Daniel. And I penned an article about it for 3kingsboxing.com. Brook earlier today posted on social media, basically apologizing for what he did, and he's seeking help. It speaks to the struggle, Daniel, of how, whether it's boxing or whether it's any other kind of sport, that some athletes have real troubles making the adjustment, right? Just keep it on in the context of this sport, the sweet science. Sugar Ray Leonard, when it came to his 3-year retirement in the early mid 80s, he admitted at some point that he kind of fell off the ledge, indulged in cocaine. Former 2-division champion Nigel Benn, he lived a hard life, not just in terms of how he grew up, but he was living that life through a lot of his career. And when he retired following the second loss to Steve Collins, his life went off the rails. And in 1999, he attempted to take his own life. And so, unfortunately, you see a continuation of that here with Brook. getting caught on film sniffing cocaine. Your reaction to it seems like the not seems like to the struggles, the pitfalls, and the demons that Kell Brook is dealing with right now.
It's unfortunately something that we see much too often in
And
sports
let
in
me
general.
excuse me, Daniel. The pitfalls that can succumb fighters, it doesn't even have to do with retirement. We're talking about in the context of retirement here, but just within athletes in general, we all know the story of Tyson Fury, his well-known struggles after he won the title. He talked about how he binged on cocaine and just went into deep depression, and the depression and the drug use that he dealt with during his career. That's what Kell Brook is dealing with now.
Yes, that like I mentioned, there is a video. I think today he came on social media to issue an apology, but it's a situation that we see a lot in athletes, and especially when they retire, because one of the highs of, unfortunately, to turn a phrase, one of the highs of being an athlete is the constant grind, the constant push for a certain key, for a certain event, for a certain date, certain task. Once you're, and the thing, unfortunately, with athletes is, especially in sports like boxing, MMA, you wind up retiring at an age where where normally most people are starting to really get into their groove in their profession. That unfortunately leaves you with a lot of time, a lot of hanger-ons, and a lot of pressure to just try to keep up that grind in a way. And unfortunately, Kell Brook fell into that. He's at least admitted it. He's at least apologized for it and is trying to recover from this. But it's a situation that is unfortunately as sad as time. You see it over and over and over again, whether it's fighters retiring or fighters that are active. The best example we can give right off the top of our head is Adrian Broner. We've seen his struggles over and over again, even as he's still active in the sport. We've seen the struggles that somebody has to go through, even when they've been on top and going down the road that Broner did. And with Brook, it was a quiet road. He was a champion, and then unfortunately while I applaud him for it, in hindsight, a foolish decision to jump up to 160 to fight Gennady Golovkin and just damage his other orbital bone. And unfortunately, those type of injuries, if they're bad enough, we've seen what can happen. Israel Vasquez lost an eye. Tony Margarito lost vision. We don't know if that would happen to Kell Brook in the future. It's sad to see, but I'm glad he's at least taking responsibility, and I'm glad that he's at least open to admit it, because a lot of times, a lot of people don't want to admit that they have these type of problems. It takes a man to admit that you have this type of problem and do it publicly. So while I'm sad for Kell Brook for going for what he's going through, I also commend him for at least acknowledging it.
Indeed. And on behalf of Daniel, we here at Pound for Pound Box Report wish Kell the best as he's overcoming, as he's trying to deal with his struggles right now. And we hope that he seeks and gets the help that he needs, not only for himself, but for his family, as well as his loved ones. Because he's as clear as evidenced by what we've seen this week, and by words, by his own words, he's definitely going through it. He's definitely going through it. Let's move on here and go from kind of trying to transition as best as we can from that dark topic to the light that is fights this weekend, right? Fights happening. We're recording this on February 3rd. Tomorrow, February 2nd, excuse me, live on the 3rd. Card on ESPN Plus, or ESPN, excuse me. Headlined by Emanuel Navarette fighting Liam Wilson for the vacant WBO belt at 130. But let's start with the undercard, Daniel. One main fight I want to focus on. Junior welterweight battle between former 130-pound champion Jose Pedraza fighting rising contender Arnold Barboza Jr. Barboza, we knew last year he tried to get a fight with Teofimo Lopez. Lopez was crickets on that. You didn't hear anything from him. You don't know what Teofimo Lopez, who he wants to fight anymore, given the fact that he's been silent on a fight with Ruguru Progress. But anyway, Pedraza. The question is, if Pedraza, he's up there in age, right? While Barboza is the younger fighter, battle of southpaws, I believe. I think the younger man wins here. I think Barboza is on the rise. Pedraza is on the descend. He can still fight Pedraza, but I just think the youth, the size, the ultimate activity of Barboza will be too much in the end. He is the one with the momentum. He's the one who's getting better and better with each fight, and he has the skill to hang right there with Pedraza, who's an excellent boxer himself. I'm going with Barboza on this one by decision. What say you, Daniel?
I second the motion. I like Jose Pedraza. I always considered him a good fighter, but one punch derailed his entire career. That punch that Tank landed at a point where I felt Pedraza was winning his fight against Tank, but unfortunately, he really hasn't been the same since. Even though he still has an excellent jab, he still has great generalship. It's just mainly the weight. I don't think the weight class serves him pretty well, and kind of an age, and you're facing somebody in Barboza that does have something to prove. That's a pretty bad combination to be facing, and luckily for Pedraza, he hasn't had a lot of devastating knockouts on his resume as far as losses. But age does catch up to everybody, and Barboza's right there to want to take it in, and like I said, put himself in the running at 140 pounds. So I say by decision too.
Sorry, I was on mute. You was mentioning in the private chat something about one of the Maloney brothers. I'm giving you the floor to talk about it right now.
In case we didn't catch it in, because I didn't see it until today. Jason Maloney has backed out of negotiations with Benito Donaire. Him and Top Rank sent aboard the WBC. They're no longer going to challenge for the vacant WBC bantamweight title. It's pretty surprising, a little bit, that it was canceled in, but there was a bit of situation, a bit of hesitance, because obviously Maloney's with Top Rank and Donaire is, I think, still with Probellum, and Probellum still has ties with Danny Kinahan. And Bob has been pretty adamant to not doing business with anybody affiliated with Kinahan. So now we're going to have Donaire trying to fight somebody else for that vacant title.
Yeah, stunned silence here. What? I don't understand. Why would they turn that opportunity down? Maloney, of course, had the earlier title shot against Inoue a couple of years ago, was stopped in 7. Um, Donaire coming off of getting blitzed by Inoue June of last year, getting stopped and getting blitzed in 2 rounds. Donaire is still a hell of a fighter, but he's also, 40 years old, will be 41 later on this year. Maloney being the younger guy, I don't understand why they would not take that opportunity. And especially given that there's a possibility that they could land that fight with Donaire in Maloney's home country of Australia. They could get Donaire to travel they could force them, they could win a possible purse bid and have that fight in Australia, right? Later on this year. It makes no sense. I don't understand.
Yeah, to me, it's a situation where Bob saw Kinahan and he saw Richard Schaefer, who he has absolutely no love lost for on the other side. And he said, Balto's fighter, I'd rather not deal with them. Well, since there's 4 belts, since anyway vacated all 4 belts, there's other avenues that we can go, other belts that we can go after. Just not this one.
Yeah. I get it. But that Kinahan article doesn't fly with me given their association with Tyson Fury. That dog don't fully hunt, in my opinion. But it is what it is. We'll see what they do moving forward. Talked about the fight with Navarette and with Pedraza and Barboza, excuse me. That fight is happening in Glendale, Arizona on ESPN2 tomorrow night. The headline of that card is going to be the return of Emanuel Navarette, who's still technically WBO featherweight champion, moving up to 130 to fight Liam Wilson for the vacant belt at a WBO title at 130 pounds, right? And the way, I know we shouldn't judge too much by the weigh-in, Daniel, but still, Liam Wilson weighing 126.3 in a fight at 130 pounds? To me, it seems like he's too small. He's too small. And I know Navarette is technically moving up from 126 himself, but we all know he is struggling. He has struggled mightily to get down to 126 pounds. And the fact that he's coming in basically full junior lightweight, while his opponent is basically a featherweight by a 0.3 pounds, that's disturbing to me.
When I saw that, and then I saw the claims that came out afterwards, and he said that the scales were being disrupted. And he said when they measured on his own scales, Liam Wilson said, I weighed as much as Navarrete.
Balderdash.
Maybe you dehydrated yourself pretty much, but there is a case to be made, unfortunately, that some fighters, like, they just reach that cap where they really can't put on more, they can't put on pounds. That's real good metabolism, but it does make the fight a little bit more of a mismatch than it already was. And granted, Navarrete has not looked as good as we saw him at 122 pounds. It's also like a case of age and his power not really translating at featherweight, and now junior lightweight. We're going to see how that happens. But it is a disadvantage. Maybe, like I said, Liam will rehydrate fairly well overnight, and they'll be a little bit more evenly matched. But Navarrete should win this out. It should be a fairly easy victory for him. But yeah, that was a weird situation. Between that and the little kerfuffle between Plant and Benavides today, interesting realm when it comes to weigh-ins and press conferences.
Yeah, those two, Plant and Beterbiev, for those who don't know, they had a press conference took place earlier today to basically give the formal announcement of their fight. And before the actual press conference, the two, well, Benavidez got into it with a member of Plant's team at the outside the venue in which the press conference took place. And yeah, that's going to continue throughout the lead up for this fight. That's going to be a major player when it comes to the hype for this fight. So I wasn't surprised by that. I wouldn't be surprised if the two get into a fight uh, before the fight. If they ends up squabbling before the fight, much in the same way that I think Plant did with his fight against Canelo. To me, that was kind of put on, if you will. The beef between Plant and Benavidez is real. It's legit. They don't like each other. They've gotten into it before in gyms and whatnot. They've gotten into it before nearly at boxing events in which both guys have attended. So that's just going to be par for the course when it comes to the lead up to their eventual fight in March, I believe. Let's move from let's move from Arizona to NYC. Hulu Theater, to be specific. Women's boxing really took over in 2022. If we're really going to be honest with ourselves, the ladies uh, met expectations. They understood the assignment. They met the assignment, and they exceeded expectations throughout the year. Multiple big time cards in last year, and we're seeing another very good card Saturday night at Hulu Theater, um, headlined by Amanda Serrano fighting Erika Cruz with undisputed honors at 126. But on the undercard, Daniel, you have a fight for quote unquote undisputed at 130. Alycia Baumgardner, who holds 3 belts, is going to fight Elhem Mekhaled, excuse me. The WBA basically gave a special exemption provision in which they would put their belt, that WBA junior lightweight belt, on the line. The quote unquote WBA, Ming Choi was the WBA junior lightweight champion, still is technically, but they put her as champion in recess, right? But in the lead up to this fight, the WBO has said because of that, because of the fact that Choi is champion in recess, they don't deem this, they don't consider this fight to be for undisputed, even though it's being promoted as undisputed. Whole mess involved. Who do you want to believe? I'll leave that up to y'all. But the fact is, it's being promoted as undisputed. Baumgardner and Mekhaled. I think this is going to be a better fight than people expect. I saw Mekhaled in her fight with Delphine Persoon May last year, I believe it was, on the undercard of a Floyd Mayweather exhibition. She stood, excuse me, Mekhaled stood right there, was right there with Persoon, and we all know how tough she is at both 130 and 135 pounds. She will give anyone a tough fight. And if you doubt me, just go back on YouTube and check out her 2 fights with Katie Taylor. She gave a hell on both occasions. Um, Mekhaled may not be able to punch, but she's in your face. She's tough. Uh, uh, she has a good chin, and she's going to press the action all night. If Baumgardner is not able to hurt her, Daniel, uh, she could be in for a rougher go than a lot of people think.
Yeah, this is to me a very interesting fight. And as far as the undisputed thing goes, yeah, it gives us the shades of what happened in the lightweight division when it came to Teofimo versus Loma, where technically it wasn't for undisputed, but they were tied into this undisputed. You have a similar situation here. But this to me is a very interesting fight because Baumgardner is going to want to come and give a better performance. Even though she won, she's going to come out try to give a better performance in this fight than what she did against Michaela Mayer. And you have somebody now in an opponent. It's not Choi. Choi would have been food for Baumgardner. I think we can all agree on that. But Mekhaled, a fighter that's going to press the action, that has a good chin and is going to be on you throughout the entire fight, that may actually be the fight that Baumgardner needs to really get her motor running, get a little bit of the bad taste of the Mayer fight, the way it's shaped up out of people's mouths, and make the rematch with Mayer, which is probably what's going to wind up happening after this, should she win, a little bit more enticing, because then she can say, you see, I can be a lot more aggressive now. Come at me. It's going to be an interesting fight, but I still want to see Choi get into that ring. As much as I know she doesn't want to, I still want to see Choi, the actual champion, be in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think I'm going with Baumgardner here. I think she's going to pull it out, but she has to be. She can't be lackadaisical in there. She says she's predicting that the fight is going to end in stoppage. Again, but I just think Mekhaled is going to give her a rougher go than many people expected on the main event. As I said before, is the main event is Amanda Serrano fighting Erika Cruz, undisputed at 126, is on the line. Even though I said earlier, I think that Baumgardner Mekhaled is going to be tougher than many people predict. I don't have that. That's not my prediction for this fight between Serrano and Cruz. Look, it's not that Cruz is a good fighter, right? She's tough. She's sturdy. She's the WBA champion, but fighting on her home turf, in her backyard, especially, I think Serrano is going to shine, and I think she's going to steamroll Cruz. We remember Serrano, the fight with Katie Taylor. If you go to threekingsboxing.com, again, that was our fight of the year, the fight between Taylor and Serrano. You still insist that Serrano won that fight, right? I believe that Katie Taylor pulled it out the fire. Be that as it may, Serrano says that she's a natural featherweight, right? But we saw her had Katie Taylor in all kinds of her in the middle rounds of that fight, and had that fight been 3-minute rounds as opposed to 2 minutes, she would have stopped her. I think going back down to her natural weight, she's going to be highly motivated fighting it at the Garden. We're fighting at Hulu Theater, right? She's going to win. She's going to overwhelm Cruz. She's going to have the crowd rocking. And yeah, in the end, everybody's going to be hollering Serrano, Katie Taylor too, when we're going to see it. To me, is Amanda Serrano in this fight all the way. Not even close.
Yeah, I like Erika Cruz. She's a good fighter. And you saw the stare down. They showed mutual respect among both fighters. But we know what Amanda wants. And we know exactly how she wants it. It's Katie Taylor. And it'll have to be in Ireland. Because, yes, I still say that Amanda won the fight. Obviously, Taylor won the decision. So now you still have to fight on her terms. So she knows she's going to be in this mission. She's also been in the mission to try to become undisputed, because I think that would probably be, if I'm correct, the first Puerto Rican fighter to be undisputed, whether men or women.
Yeah.
Because the closest to come would have been Trinidad, but then he met Hawkins,
right.
But Amanda knows she has history up, and she knows what she wants. That is Katie Taylor, and she knows she's got to look good while doing it. She's got to make it to a point where fans will not want anything else but a rematch. And now claiming to be undisputed, that'll be a good enticing thing, even if she has to go to Ireland to do it.
Yeah, and there's already word on the street that behind the scenes, the fight has a rematch with Taylor has basically been signed and basically been agreed to. Um, if Serrano defeats Cruz Saturday, something which I think that she will have that will happen uh, with ease. With ease, again, I'll put my flag down on this one. Um, Serrano got this one in the bag. She's going to shine at home. This is her moment, and she's going to impress. She's really going to impress, and I think we're going to um, end things on that note. Again, for those who are listening to us live, due to scheduling conflicts, Gail could not be with us this evening. We're shooting this live on a Thursday, and that's usually work time for her. She has other obligations out there on the West Coast on Thursday. So we hope to have her back soon. But I want to thank everybody who's listening. Again, if you're checking us out on YouTube, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. It'll help the overall algorithms of Pound for Pound Box Report on YouTube and get us closer to being monetized. I'll go to you, Daniel. Daniel from the Inscriber for Ford Boxing News, for anybody who wants to talk the sweet science, for anyone who wants to talk professional wrestling, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yes, folks. Luckily, Elon hasn't burned on Twitter yet, so you can still find me on Twitter. RAWKUZ99, Raucus99. Definitely catch me on there. I know I said I've been dropping pods now a little bit more frequently when it comes to wrestling. Mike has pointed that out. And yeah, I have a little bit of a bad taste tonight considering the way the Knicks game ended, but it is what it is. But shout out to Brian Custer.
Talk your ish, Custer. Talk your ish.
Yeah, like people try to test Custer, say like he's scared to catch a right hand. Perfect reply. You better Google me. I fear no man. Yeah, you better Google Brian Custer.
For those who are unaware of what Daniel is talking about, Custer was hosted the Plant Benavidez press conference, right? And someone had the audacity, as there was a moment in which Benavidez and Plant almost got into it during the presser, and someone had the audacity to tweet that Custer was scared standing there, and Custer responded basically, you better check my Google to find out who I am. And as someone who has had the pleasure of the honor of interviewing Brian Custer for Three Kings Boxing, check his resume, homie, or more importantly, check his IG. I'll just say this: the brother, he knows how to defend himself in different disciplines. Be it the boxer, he's been boxing for years. He has sparred. He's also into MMA, and doggone it, he's a cancer survivor. So that makes him tough enough right there. Leave him alone and put some respect on that man's name. That's all I got to say. In terms of where to reach me, if you want to talk boxing, boxing, music, fitness, you can do so on Twitter at Brother JR76. If you want to talk boxing, fitness, music, and fragrance with me on IG and TikTok, I just dropped a couple of fragrance videos during our time away here on Pound for Pound Boxing Report, including one late last week, which has gotten some positive reviews both on IG and TikTok. You can check me out there on those platforms at Brother JR SC. On the next Pound for Pound Boxing Report, next episode Pound for Pound Boxing Report, again, fingers crossed we will be back next week. If we are, we will do a recap of Emanuel Navarette in his fight against Liam Smith for the vacant WBO belt at 130. We will do a recap of Pedraza and Barboza, that junior welterweight contest. If I said junior lightweight earlier in the show, my apologies. It's actually junior welterweight contest. Also on that card, Richard Torres, Olympic silver medalist at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. He's fighting on that card as well as Nico Ali Walsh. So we may talk about those fights on that card. Also, we will do a recap of Serrano, Cruz, of Baumgardner, Mekhaled. Sky Nicholson is also fighting on that card in the WBC Women's Featherweight Eliminator. Number one WBC Super Middleweight contender, Shadasia Green. She's also fighting on that card. And hopefully we'll be back next week. So we'll recap those fights and we will do a preview of fight for the vacant WBC 130-pound belt between Ray Vargas, who's current WBC champion at 126, and Oshike Foster, who's number one contender by the WBC. So we'll talk about all those fights. Hopefully we'll be back next week. Fingers crossed. So again, my apologies once again for Gail, who was not here this evening. Hopefully we'll have her back on next week. Just depends on my schedule. For Gail, for Daniel, I'm your host, Michael. This has been episode 391 of the Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time. Y'all have a good one. Good evening. Good night.
Good night, folks.
And rest. And again, keep your head up, folks. Keep your head up given the disturbing video of Tyree Nicholson. Just a tragic situation. I just want to acknowledge that. Did I see the video? No. The full video? No. Will I see it? Probably not. It's just too much for me at this particular point. But yeah, here for Daniel, for myself here at the Pound for Pound Box Report, our condolences to the family, to the loved ones of Ty Nicholson in that just horrific situation that took place. Senseless act by Memphis Police Department there in Memphis, Tennessee. Uncalled for, unwarranted, unnecessary. He should be alive with his family right now. I know people say justice for Tyree. I get that, but there is no real true justice because he's dead and gone. So yeah, just wanted to our condolences to him and his family, and just honor that and acknowledge that situation here on Pound for Pound Box Report. Again, episode 391 of Pound for Pound Box Report. We will see you guys next time.